The sand beneath my feet tells stories that blood has written, grain by grain, combat by combat, death by death. Each morning when I wake in this stone cell that has become both prison and sanctuary, I feel the weight of countless battles settling into my bones like sediment in a riverbed. The amphitheater calls to me even in sleep, its roar echoing through my dreams, a beast that demands feeding, and I am both hunter and prey in its eternal hunger. My name was once Marcus Aurelius Flavianus, though that identity feels as distant, now as the rolling hills of Gaul where I was born free. The Romans took that name from me along with everything else, my family, my land, my future, but they could not take the fire that burns in my chest, the rage that has kept me alive through 7 years of combat in the arena. 7 years. In Gladiator time, that is several lifetimes. Most who enter the ludus do not see their second year. I have become something of a legend, though legends in the arena are built on the bones of the forgotten. The lanista calls me Ferox, now the Fierce One, and the name has stuck like dried blood on leather. The crowd chants it when I enter the arena, their voices rising like incense to whatever gods still listen to the prayers of killers. Ferox, Ferox, they scream, and I wonder if they understand that they are calling for their own deaths. For, in naming me, they make themselves complicit in the machinery of slaughter that defines this empire. Dawn breaks differently when you know it might be your last. The light that filters through the small window of my cell carries with it the promise of either glory or oblivion, and I have long since stopped caring which awaits me. What matters is the moment between heartbeats when the gate opens and I step into the arena, when the crowd falls silent for that brief instant before erupting into their bloodthirsty chorus. In that silence lives everything I have lost and everything I have become. The ludus where I train and sleep and eat and prepare. To die is a world unto itself, governed by laws older than Rome, harsher than any Caesar's decree. We are property here, yet we are also gods of a sort, worshipped and feared in equal measure. The other gladiators move through these corridors like spirits caught between worlds, no longer fully human, not yet completely animal, existing in that liminal space where survival is the only moral imperative. There is Brutus, the Thracian, whose scars map the geography of 2 decades in the arena. His eyes hold depths that reflect not light, but darkness. The accumulated weight of watching friends die, of killing men whose only crime was being born into the wrong circumstances at the wrong time. He speaks little, but when he does, his words carry the authority of someone who has looked death in the face so many times they have become intimate acquaintances. Then there is young Gaius, barely 18, sold into slavery to pay his father's debts. The boy still dreams of escape, still believes in tomorrow, still prays to gods who have seemingly abandoned this place. I watch him practice with the wooden sword, his movements clumsy but eager, and I see myself 7 years ago, proud, angry, certain that I would find a way to break these chains. The arena has a way of breaking such certainties, of grinding hope into the same sand that soaks up our blood. The Retiarius Quintus fights with net and trident, dancing around his opponents like some deadly sea creature evolved for land. He came from the docks of Ostia, they say, where he learned to read the tide and the wind, skills that translated strangely well to reading the rhythms of combat. His laughter echoes through the training yard even now, a sound both beautiful and terrible, for it is the laughter of someone who has accepted the absurdity of his situation so completely that he finds joy in it. And there is Spartacus, not the legendary one who shook the foundations of the Republic, but a younger man who carries that name like a burden and a blessing. Sometimes I catch him staring at the walls that contain us, and I know he is thinking what we all think but dare not voice, that these stones are not as solid as they appear, that freedom is not as distant as our masters would have us believe. But thoughts of rebellion are dangerous luxuries in a place where survival depends on the ability to focus completely on the next fight, the next opponent, the next chance to live another day. The training begins before the sun clears the walls of the ludus. We rise to the sound of the bronze bell that marks the rhythm of our days, its tone both funeral dirge and battle cry. The trainers, former gladiators themselves who have earned their freedom through skill and longevity, watch us with eyes that see everything, the hesitation that means death, the overconfidence that leads to carelessness, the despair that makes a man lower his guard for just one fatal moment. My trainer, Lucius Vero, lost his left eye to a Gallic longsword 15 years ago. The socket that remains is a reminder that even the best can fall, that the arena respects no one, grants no exemptions for skill or experience or the favor of the crowd. But that missing eye has taught him to see more clearly with the one that remains, to read the intentions written in the way a man holds his shoulders, the messages carried in the angle of a blade. The arena does not care about your pain. He tells us each morning as we stretch muscles still sore from yesterday's training. It does not care about your fears, your hopes, your memories of home. The arena cares only about this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. Learn to live in the present, or learn to die in it. There is no middle ground. His words have become a kind of prayer for me, a mantra I repeat as I practice the forms that have kept me alive through dozens of combats. The thrust and parry, the feint encounter, the precise movements that mean the difference between walking out of the arena and being carried out on a stretcher. Each motion is a letter in the alphabet of survival, and I have learned to speak this language with a fluency that still surprises me. The weapons become extensions of ourselves, no longer foreign objects but familiar companions that we know as intimately as lovers. My gladius, the short sword that gives our profession its name, fits my hand like it was forged for it alone. The balance is perfect, the edge keen enough to split hairs, the grip worn smooth by the sweat of training and the blood of combat. I know its weight, its reach, its temperament in different weather, against different types of armor, when wielded in anger versus when wielded in cold calculation. My shield bears the scars of countless impacts, its bronze boss dented and rehammered so many times that it has taken on an almost organic quality, like the shell of some great turtle that has weathered storms beyond counting. The leather straps have been replaced dozens of times, but the wood beneath remains solid, reliable, a second skin that has saved my life more times than I can count. The manica that protects my sword arm is a work of art in its own right, articulated plates of steel and leather that move with me like liquid metal. It bears the scratches and marks of near misses, glancing blows that could have severed tendons or shattered bone. Sometimes I trace these marks with my fingers and try to remember the specific moment each one was made, the face of the opponent, the roar of the crowd, the split-second decision that meant survival. But it is not just the weapons and armor that define us. The arena strips away everything non-essential, reduces us to our core elements like some alchemical process. Fear, courage, skill, desperation, these become the only currencies that matter. I have learned to read these qualities in my opponents, as surely as an augur reads the flight of birds, to see in their stance and movement and breathing the story of who they are and how they will die. The crowd plays its own role in this deadly theater. They are not merely spectators but participants, their energy feeding into the combats like wind into a fire. On the days when the amphitheater is full, when 50,000 voices rise as one, the very air seems to vibrate with bloodlust and excitement. The sound hits you like a physical force when you step into the arena, a wall of noise that can either paralyze or intoxicate, depending on how you choose to receive it. I have learned to use the crowd, to play to their desires and expectations. They love a fighter who shows courage in the face of death, who dies well if death is his fate. But they also love spectacle, drama, the kind of combat that tells a story they can understand and cheer for. A quick, clean kill might be merciful, but it does not satisfy their hunger for entertainment. They want to see struggle, to witness the moment when a man's will breaks or proves unbreakable. The thumb, that simple gesture that can mean life or death, is decided not by the editor of the games, but by the crowd itself. I have seen brave men die because the mob wanted blood, and cowards live because their pitiful struggling amused the masses. There is no justice in the arena, only the will of Rome expressed through the collective voice of its citizens. We are the instruments through which they explore their own capacity for cruelty and mercy, living metaphors for the empire's own struggle between civilization and savagery. The nights before major games are the worst. Sleep becomes elusive when you know that tomorrow might be your last dawn, that all your training and experience might prove insufficient against a younger, stronger, or simply luckier opponent. I lie on my straw mattress and listen to the sounds of the ludus, the quiet sobbing of those who have not yet learned to bury their emotions, the fervent prayers of men bargaining with gods, the steady breathing of veterans who have made peace with whatever tomorrow might bring. Sometimes I think about escape. Every gladiator does, even those who claim to love the arena. The walls of the ludus are high, but not insurmountable. The guards are vigilant, but not omniscient. There are moments when freedom seems as close as the next breath, when the possibility of running dangles before us like fruit on a low branch. But where would we run to? We are marked men, our scars and muscles announcing our profession to anyone who looks closely. Our faces are known throughout the empire, depicted on pottery and mosaics, celebrated and feared in equal measure. The escaped gladiator is a prize, worth pursuing, and the bounty hunters who track us are skilled in their own dark profession. More than that, though, the arena changes you in ways that make the outside world seem foreign and hostile. We have learned to live with death as a constant companion, to find meaning in violence, to measure our worth by our ability to take life and avoid losing our own. How does such a man return to normal society? How does he learn to care about the petty concerns of free citizens when he has spent years focused on the eternal questions of life and death? I knew a gladiator once named Demetrius, who won his freedom after 12 years in the arena. He was granted the wooden sword, the rudis, that symbolizes a gladiator's release from obligation. The crowd cheered him that day, showered him with flowers and coins, celebrated his achievement as if he were a returning hero. 6 months later, he was back, begging the lanista to let him fight again. The world outside had proven too tame, too meaningless, too empty of the intensity that had defined his existence for over a decade. I felt like I was already dead. He told me the night before his return to the sand, "At least here, when I kill or die, it means something. Out there, I was just waiting to die of old age or disease or accident. Here, I choose my death or I choose to live. That choice is the only freedom I've ever known." He died 3 weeks later, killed by a Germanic warrior barely old enough to shave. But I saw his face in those final moments, and there was something like peace in it. A recognition that he had found his way back to the only place where his life had meaning. The games themselves follow their own rhythm, their own logic. The morning begins with the venaciones, the beast hunts that serve as appetizers for the main event. Condemned criminals are fed to lions and bears, their screams serving as background music for the conversations of citizens who have come early to secure good seats. We gladiators watch sometimes from the holding cells beneath the arena, listening to the roars of animals and men, waiting for our turn to become the entertainment. The executions come next, the meridiani, when the weakest criminals are forced to fight each other with inadequate weapons, their deaths serving as a brutal intermission between the beast hunts and the gladiatorial combats. These men die without skill or honor, their blood soaking into the sand like water into a sponge, forgotten before their bodies have been dragged away. But when the trumpet sounds for the gladiatorial games, everything changes. The crowd's attention focuses with laser intensity, their conversations dying away as we march into the arena in full armor, our weapons glinting in the afternoon sun. This is what they have come to see. Trained killers at the peak of their abilities, men who have dedicated their lives to the art of violent death. The parade around the arena serves multiple purposes. It allows the crowd to see us clearly, to make their bets, to choose their favorites. It gives us time to assess the sand, the wind, the angle of the sun, all factors that can mean the difference between victory and defeat. And it builds the tension that makes everything that follows more intense, more meaningful, more cathartic. When we stop before the imperial box, or the seat of whoever is sponsoring these particular games, and deliver the traditional salute, I sometimes catch myself wondering if these words mean anything anymore. Ave Caesar, morituri te salutant. Hail Caesar, those who are about to die salute you. The formula is ancient, the sentiment unclear. Are we asking for blessing, offering defiance, simply acknowledging the reality of our situation? perhaps all three, or perhaps none. Perhaps. They are just words, worn smooth by repetition like stones in a riverbed. The individual combats that follow are exercises in applied psychology as much as physical skill. Reading your opponent becomes as important as reading his weapons. Is he confident or afraid? Experienced or green? Fighting for his life or fighting for glory? These questions shape strategy, dictate tactics, determine whether you press the EI attack or wait for him to make the first mistake. I remember my first opponent, a seasoned Murmillo named Cassius, who had survived 4 years in various arenas throughout the Empire. He was older than me, more experienced, scarred by dozens of battles. But I could see in his eyes that he was tired, that the fire that had kept him alive was beginning to burn low. He fought technically, defensively, without the passion that transforms mere skill into art. I was young then, angry, driven by a fury that had not yet been tempered by experience. I attacked with reckless abandon, absorbing his careful strikes on my shield while looking for the opening that would let me inside his guard. When it came, a momentary drop of his sword arm as he adjusted his grip, I was ready. My gladius found the gap between his helmet and his shoulder guard, sliding between muscles and sinews to find the great artery that feeds the brain. He died quickly, which was a mercy, though the crowd complained about the brevity of the combat. They had wanted to see more suffering, more drama, more of the elaborate dance between death and survival that makes gladiatorial combat the supreme entertainment. But his death taught me something important, that in the arena, hesitation is suicide, and mercy is a luxury that can get you killed. Over the years, I have killed 37 men in single combat, not counting the mass battles and the speciality. Events that sometimes feature dozens of gladiators fighting simultaneously. Each death is recorded not just in the official records but in my memory, inscribed there with the clarity that comes from extreme circumstances. I remember their names when they had names, their faces, their final words, the way they fell, the sound their armor made when it hit the sand. Some died bravely, meeting death with the courage that Romans claimed to value above all other virtues. Others died pleading, begging for mercy from a crowd that had come specifically to see them die. A few died with laughter on their lips, as if they had discovered some cosmic joke in their final moments. But all of them died as gladiators, which means they died as entertainers, their deaths choreographed and commodified for the pleasure of citizens who would go home afterward to complain about the price of bread or the behavior of their slaves. The worst deaths are not the violent ones, but the slow ones, when a man takes a wound that does not kill immediately, but bleeds steadily, inexorably, while he continues to fight. I have seen gladiators battle for 20 minutes with mortal wounds, their strength ebbing with their blood, their movements becoming sluggish and predictable as death tightens its grip. The crowd loves these battles, cheering each stumble, each desperate rally, each moment when it seems the dying man might find some reserve of strength to continue the fight. I try not to inflict such deaths when I can avoid it. A quick stroke to the heart or throat serves the same purpose with less suffering, though it satisfies the crowd less completely. But there are times when circumstances dictate otherwise, when the angle is wrong, or the armor deflects the blade, or simple exhaustion makes precise targeting impossible. In those moments, I remind myself that mercy is sometimes just another form of cruelty, that a man who is going to die anyway deserves to die with whatever dignity the situation allows. The rewards of success in the arena are substantial but strange. Prize money accumulates in accounts I may never live to spend. Women of good families send love letters to a slave they will never meet, fantasizing about the hands that have dealt death dozens of times. Children play games in the streets, pretending to be me, imitating the moves they have seen me make, unaware that each gesture they copy was born from desperation and necessity rather than glory. The lanista treats successful gladiators well, understanding that we are investments that must be maintained. My cell is larger than most, furnished with a real bed instead of straw, equipped with oil lamps for reading by night. I have access to the best medical care, the finest food, weapons, and armor crafted by master smiths who take pride in their contribution to my survival. But these privileges come with their own weight. The better I become, the more valuable I become, the more difficult escape becomes. The more famous I grow, the more recognizable I become, the smaller the world becomes. Success in the arena is its own kind of prison, and the bars are made of expectations rather than iron. The religious aspects of gladiatorial combat are complex and contradictory. We fight in honor of the dead, yet we deal death constantly. We spill blood in ceremonies meant to appease the gods, yet we ourselves are considered polluted by that same blood. Priests bless our weapons before battle, but will not touch us afterward. We are sacred and profane simultaneously, holy warriors and cursed killers occupying the same body. I have developed my own relationship with the divine over the years, though it bears little resemblance to the official religion of the empire. My gods are older, darker, more honest about the nature of existence. They do not promise rewards in an afterlife, but demand courage in this one. They do not judge the morality of killing, but ask only that it be done with skill and purpose. They are gods of the arena, born from the sand and blood of countless combats, worshipped by men who have no other sanctuary. Before each fight, I make my own private devotions, not to Jupiter or Mars or any of the gods whose statues decorate Roman temples, but to the spirit of combat itself, to the force that moves through trained bodies and sharpened steel to create moments of terrible beauty. I ask not for victory, but for the strength to face whatever comes with honor, to die well if death is required, to kill cleanly if killing is necessary. The other gladiators have their own rituals, their own relationships with whatever powers they believe govern their fate. Some pray to the gods of their homelands, maintaining connections to cultures and beliefs that slavery could not entirely sever. Others adopt Roman deities, hoping that worship of imperial gods might somehow improve their fortunes in imperial arenas. Still others create new pantheons from the fragments of old ones, mixing traditions and mythologies into personal religions suited to their unique circumstances. What we all share is an understanding that the arena is sacred space, consecrated by blood and governed by laws that transcend the merely human. When we step onto the sand, we enter a realm where normal rules are suspended, where the only commandments are those written in steel and sinew and the collective will of the watching crowd. The crowd itself becomes a kind of deity in these moments, omnipresent and all-powerful, capable of granting life or decreeing death with a simple gesture. We perform for this god of many faces, seeking its approval, fearing its displeasure, shaped by its desires in ways that are both subtle and profound. The gladiator who ignores the crowd does so at his peril, for even the most skilled fighter can find himself condemned by spectators who feel cheated of spectacle. But the relationship is symbiotic rather than simply exploitative. The crowd needs us as much as we need them, perhaps more. Through our struggles, they experience emotions and sensations that their comfortable lives rarely provide. Through our courage or cowardice, they explore their own capacity for both. Through our deaths, they confront their own mortality in a safely controlled environment. We are their nightmares and their dreams made flesh, their fears and fantasies given form and set loose in the sand. When they cheer our victories, they are cheering for their own triumph over circumstance. When they demand our deaths, they are asserting their power over fate itself. We are the instruments through which they play out the great themes of existence: love and hate, courage and cowardice, justice and injustice, life and death. The gladiatorial schools throughout the empire maintain a complex network of communication and competition. Fighters are bought and sold, traded and loaned, sent from ludus to ludus like commodities in any other market. But we are also artists of a sort, and like all artists, we are influenced by different schools of technique and philosophy. The Gallic style emphasizes mobility and improvisation, teaching fighters to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. The Germanic approach focuses on raw power and aggression, overwhelming opponents through sheer ferocity. The Thracian method blends defense and offense in carefully balanced combinations, seeking to wear down opponents through superior conditioning and technique. I have studied all these approaches and others, borrowing techniques that suit my physical attributes and temperament while discarding those that do not. My style has evolved over the years, shaped by victories and defeats, by opponents who taught me lessons through their skill or their mistakes, by the demands of crowds who rewarded certain types of performance over others. But beneath all technique lies something more fundamental: the will to survive, the refusal to accept defeat, the ability to find strength in desperation and clarity in chaos. These qualities cannot be taught, only awakened, and the arena is the crucible that reveals whether they exist or not. Some gladiators discover reserves of courage they never knew they possessed, rising from slavery and obscurity to achieve fame that will outlast the empire itself. Others break under the pressure, becoming shadows of themselves, fighting without heart or hope until inevitable defeat releases them from their torment. I have walked the line between these extremes for 7 years, neither soaring to legendary heights nor falling to ignoble depths. I survived through careful calculation, thorough preparation, and the kind of stubborn persistence that refuses to acknowledge the possibility of surrender. It is not the most heroic approach, but it is effective, and in the arena, effectiveness is the only virtue that matters. The seasons change outside the walls of the ludus, but inside, time is measured differently. We mark our days not by the calendar, but by training sessions, by the rhythm of preparation and combat, by the gradual accumulation of scars and skills and memories. Spring means more frequent games as magistrates compete to impress voters. Summer brings the great festivals when the most elaborate spectacles are staged. Autumn sees the final major contests before winter reduces the frequency of public entertainments. Winter is the closest thing we have to peace. The crowds are smaller, the contests less frequent, the pressure reduced enough to allow for something approaching normal life. During these months, we train more and fight less, honing techniques, healing injuries, preparing for the next cycle of violence. But even winter cannot entirely shut out the reality of what we are and what we do. The wooden swords we use in training still carry the weight of memory, still echo with the movements that have killed and maimed and wounded. The exercises we practice are not abstract forms, but specific preparations for specific moments when specific techniques will mean the difference between life and death. Sleep comes easier in winter, but the dreams remain the same. I am haunted, not by guilt. The arena has no room for such luxury, but by the faces of men who died by my hand, by words they spoke in their final moments, by the weight of accumulated mortality that seems to grow heavier with each passing year. Sometimes I wonder what I might have been if the legions had never come to Gaul, if my village had never been burned, if my family had never been scattered to the corners of the empire. I might have been a farmer like my father, measuring my worth in harvests rather than kills. I might have married the girl who smiled at me from across the village square, raised children who would never know the weight of weapons or the taste of another man's blood. But such speculation is dangerous, a form of self-torture that serves no purpose except to weaken resolve. The past is as dead as the men I have killed, and the future exists only in the next breath, the next heartbeat, the next moment when steel meets flesh, and one man's story ends while another's continues. What remains is the present, this cell, this body, this mind trained to function at the intersection of life and death. What remains is the arena and the crowd and the eternal dance between killer and victim, hunter and prey, survivor and corpse. What remains is the simple fact that tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that, I will walk through that gate, once more, raise my sword to the sun, and discover whether my story ends or continues for another chapter. The gladiatorial games serve purposes beyond mere entertainment, though their deeper functions are rarely acknowledged openly. They are a valve for the pressure that builds in any society where inequality is extreme and opportunity limited. They provide a forum for the exploration of themes too dangerous to address directly. Questions about power and justice, about the value of human life, about the relationship between civilization and savagery. When a slave defeats a citizen in the arena, when skill triumphs over status, when courage proves more valuable than wealth, the crowd witnesses a temporary inversion of the social order that would be revolutionary if it occurred anywhere else. But because it happens in the controlled environment of the amphitheater, because it is contained within the ritual framework of the games, it serves to reinforce rather than challenge the existing hierarchy. The message is clear, exceptional, Individuals can rise above their circumstances through extraordinary effort, but such exceptions prove rather than disprove the rule that most people are destined to remain in the stations to which they were born. The gladiator who wins his freedom becomes not a symbol of rebellion, but a testament to the empire's fairness, evidence that Rome rewards merit regardless of origin. Yet there is something subversive in the very existence of the arena, something that cannot be entirely contained by official ideology. When thousands of citizens gather to watch slaves kill each other for sport, when they bet on the outcomes and debate the relative merits of different fighters, when they develop emotional attachments to men they will never meet, they are participating in a system that reveals uncomfortable truths about human nature and imperial power. The gladiators themselves become a kind of mirror in which Rome sees its own reflection, distorted but recognizable. We embody the violence that built the empire and maintains it. We represent the expendability of individual life in service to collective entertainment. We demonstrate the transformation of human beings into commodities, the reduction of existence to spectacle. But we also represent something else, the possibility of dignity in the face of degradation, of courage in the face of death, of meaning in the face of meaninglessness. Every gladiator who dies well, who faces the end with composure and grace, challenges the assumption that we are merely animals trained to kill for the amusement of our betters. The paradox is that the more successfully we fulfill our role as entertainers, the more we transcend that role to become something else. Symbols, myths, legends that outlive the specific circumstances that created them. The greatest gladiators are remembered not as slaves but as heroes, their names spoken with the same reverence accorded to generals and emperors. This transformation from commodity to legend is perhaps the closest thing to freedom available to us. And it explains why some gladiators fight with such fierce determination even when defeat seems certain. To die memorably is to achieve a kind of immortality, to ensure that some part of yourself survives the flesh that contains it. I think about this as I prepare for what may be my final contest. The rumors have been circulating through the ludus for weeks. Whispers about a special exhibition, a celebration of the emperor's victories in Germania. A spectacle that will require the participation of the most experienced gladiators available. The details remain vague, but the implications are clear. Such events are designed to showcase the power and generosity of the sponsor, which means they must be memorable, spectacular, worthy of discussion in the streets and forums for months afterward. They are not the routine contests that fill the regular schedule, but extraordinary occasions that demand extraordinary participants. I have been selected, along with a dozen other veterans from various schools throughout the region. We are to be the main attraction, the centerpiece around which the entire celebration revolves. It is an honor that comes with its own burden, the knowledge that failure will be magnified by the importance of the occasion, that success will be measured not just by survival but by the quality of the performance. The other gladiators chosen for this event represent the best of their respective disciplines. There is Marcus Brutus, the retiarius whose net has claimed more than 40 lives over 8 years of competition. His movements in the arena are like poetry written in violence, each cast of his net a precisely calculated verse in an epic of death. Gaius Maximus fights as a hoplomachus, armed with spear and small shield in the Greek manner. His style is conservative, methodical, based on patient positioning and perfect timing rather than flashy technique. He has never been defeated in single combat, though he has been wounded often enough to carry scars that map a geography of near misses and narrow escapes. The Gallic warrior Vercingetorix, named for the hero who once defied Caesar himself, wields the long sword of his ancestors with a skill that seems almost supernatural. His reach is enormous, his strength legendary, his ferocity in combat matched only by his gentleness in the training yard. He fights for his dead nation as much as for his own life, carrying the weight of conquered peoples in every stroke of his blade. Together we represent the flower of gladiatorial skill, the culmination of years of training and experience and survival. We are the living embodiments of everything the arena can produce. Killers elevated to the level of art, slaves transformed into legends, Men who have learned to find meaning in the space between heartbeats, where life and death dance their eternal dance. The preparation for such an event is different from the routine training that fills our normal days. Everything is intensified, focused, refined to its essential elements. We practice not just techniques, but presentation, not just survival, but spectacle. The crowd that will watch us die expects more than mere competence. They demand excellence, artistry, the kind of performance that justifies the enormous expense of staging such an elaborate celebration. My own preparation has become a form of meditation, a way of reconciling myself to whatever fate awaits in the arena. I spend hours each day in weapons practice, but I also spend time in mental preparation, visualizing different scenarios, exploring the possible ways each combat might unfold, rehearsing the decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. The philosophical questions that once seemed abstract have become urgently practical. What does it mean to die well? How does one maintain dignity in the face of public execution? What legacy can a gladiator leave beyond the momentary entertainment his death provides? These questions have no easy answers, but they have shaped my approach to what may be my final performance. If I am to die, I want my death to mean something, to stand for something, to represent some truth about the human condition that transcends the specific circumstances of the arena. But I also want to live, to continue this strange existence that has become the only life I know, to wake tomorrow in this cell and prepare for another day of training, another chance to test myself against the ultimate challenge. The contradiction is irreconcilable, but necessary. I must prepare to die well while fighting to live, must accept the possibility of defeat while refusing to surrender. The night before the great exhibition, sleep comes in fragments interrupted by dreams that blend memory and anticipation into confused narratives of combat and death. I dream of my first opponent, of my most recent victory, of battles yet to be fought and opponents yet to be faced. I dream of home, though home no longer exists except in these nocturnal visions that grow dimmer with each passing year. When I wake, the cell is still dark, the oil lamp burned down to its last flicker, but I can hear the sounds of the ludus, awakening, the shuffle of sandals on stone, the murmur of voices, the subtle change in atmosphere that precedes important events. Today is the day that will determine whether my story ends or continues, whether my name joins the ranks of legendary gladiators or disappears into the anonymity that claims most of our kind. As I rise and begin the rituals that prepare me for combat, the stretching that loosens muscles, the prayers that focus the mind, the careful inspection of equipment that could save or doom me, I am aware that these actions may be the last I perform as a living man. The thought brings neither fear nor exhilaration, but a strange calm, the peace that comes from accepting what cannot be changed while preparing to influence what can be. The armor feels different today, heavier and lighter simultaneously, as if it carries the weight of all the battles that have led to this moment, while freeing me from the burden of everything that might follow. The gladius in my hand is no longer just a weapon, but an extension of will, a tool for writing the final chapter of whatever story my life has been telling. When the call comes to assemble, when the time arrives to march through the tunnels toward the arena, I will be ready, ready to fight, ready to die, ready to discover which of these fates awaits me in the sand that has drunk the blood of thousands and may soon drink mine as well. The arena is eternal, its hunger never satisfied, its demand for sacrifice never ending. We gladiators are temporary, brief flames that burn brightly before being extinguished, but the arena endures, waiting for the next generation of killers to feed its ancient appetite. Today I join that eternal dance between life and death, between performer and audience, between the mortal and the immortal. Today I discover whether my 7 years in the arena have prepared me for this ultimate test, or whether they have simply been an elaborate prelude to a failure that was always inevitable. The crowd is gathering. I can hear them in the distance, 50,000 voices beginning to blend into the roar that will either celebrate my victory or demand my death. Soon the gates will open, and I will step into the arena one more time, carrying with me everything I have learned and everything I have lost, everything I have become and everything I might yet be. The trumpets sound, brass voices cutting through, the morning air like swords through silk. The time for preparation is over. The time for action has arrived. I adjust my grip on the gladius, feel the familiar weight of the shield on my arm, and walk toward whatever destiny awaits in the sand. The tunnel that leads from the holding cells to the arena floor is narrow and dark, carved from the living rock beneath the amphitheater. Our footsteps echo in the confined space, creating rhythms that sound almost like heartbeats, almost like funeral drums. The air grows warmer as we approach the arena, heated by the sun and the breathing of 50,000 spectators. Light appears. Ahead, not the gentle illumination of oil lamps or candles, but the harsh, revealing brilliance of midday sun. It transforms the tunnel mouth into a portal between worlds, between the hidden realm where gladiators prepare for death and the public space where they embrace it. With each step, the roar of the crowd grows louder, more insistent, more demanding. When I emerge into the arena, the sound hits me like a physical blow. 50,000 voices united in anticipation, their collective breath creating winds that stir the sand at our feet. The amphitheater rises around us in tiers of marble and humanity, every seat filled, every eye focused on the small group of armed men who have just entered this vast space. The sand beneath my feet is fresh, raked smooth by slaves who worked through the night to prepare the arena for today's spectacle. But I can feel the history contained in these grains, the blood of countless gladiators who have died here, the sweat of those who have triumphed, the tears of those who have fallen. Each grain tells a story, and today I will add my own to the collection. We form the traditional line and begin our circuit of the arena, allowing the crowd to see us clearly, to evaluate our chances, to place their bets on our survival or death. The procession is both triumphant and funereal. We are heroes being celebrated and condemned men being displayed for the entertainment of the masses. The imperial box is draped in purple silk, its occupant seated on a throne that glitters with gold and precious stones. The emperor himself has come to witness this celebration of his victories, to bask in the reflected glory of conquest while men die for his amusement. His presence elevates the importance of every combat, makes every death more meaningful, and every survival more precious. When we reach the imperial box, we halt and raise our weapons in the traditional salute, Ave Caesar, morituri te salutant. The words echo across the arena, carrying with them the weight of centuries, the accumulated voices of thousands of gladiators who have spoken these same words before facing their own mortality. The emperor acknowledges our salute with a slight nod, his expression unreadable behind the mask of absolute power. He is younger than I expected, perhaps 30 years old, with the soft features of someone who has never faced death in personal combat. His hands, I notice, are smooth and unmarked by the calluses that weapons create. He is a killer of nations, rather than individuals, a dealer in wholesale, rather than retail death. The games begin with a series of preliminary contests, newer gladiators, men with less experience but equal desperation, fighting for the chance to survive another day. I watch these combats with professional interest, noting techniques, evaluating strengths and weaknesses, but also with something approaching compassion. These men are where I was 7 years ago, terrified but determined, skilled but inexperienced, hoping that courage and luck will prove sufficient to overcome the odds. Some of them die well, maintaining their dignity even as their blood darkens the sand. Others break under the pressure, begging for mercy that will not come, dying badly and being forgotten immediately. The crowd reserves its cheers for those who provide entertainment, its silence for those who disappoint. Between the preliminary contests, exotic animals are paraded around the arena, lions from Africa, bears from Germania, elephants from the far reaches of the empire. These creatures will participate in the beast hunts that form part of the day's entertainment, but their presence now serves to remind everyone of Rome's vast reach, its ability to gather the world's most dangerous predators for the amusement of its citizens. The animals pace restlessly in their wheeled cages, sensing the tension in the air, the expectation of violence that permeates the atmosphere. Their eyes hold a wildness that has been temporarily contained but not eliminated, a reminder that beneath the veneer of civilization lies something older and more primal. When the preliminary contests conclude, there is a brief intermission during which the sand is raked clean and fresh weapons are distributed to the arena slaves. The crowd uses this time to place additional bets, to discuss the performances they have witnessed, to speculate about the main events still to come. I spend the interval in meditation, focusing my attention on the present moment, on the sensation of air entering and leaving my lungs, on the weight of armor and weapons, on the subtle changes in wind direction that could affect the trajectory of a thrown net, or the balance of a charging opponent. The ability to remain present, to avoid being trapped in memories of past victories or anxieties about future defeats, is perhaps the most important skill any gladiator can develop. The trumpet sounds again, calling us back to the arena floor. This time, we enter not as a group, but individually, each gladiator announced by a herald who recites our names, our origins, our records of victory and defeat. The crowd responds differently to each announcement, cheering for favorites, booing those they wish to see die, expressing their preferences with the casual cruelty of those who risk nothing themselves. When my name is called, Ferox the Gallic, destroyer, victor in 37 single combats, survivor of the great games of 3 years past, the crowd's response is mixed. Some cheer, recognizing my skill and experience. Others call for my death, perhaps bored by my conservative fighting style, perhaps simply wanting to see a legend fall. The sound washes over me without penetrating my consciousness. I have learned to hear the crowd without listening to it, to remain aware of its mood without being controlled by its whims. My first opponent is a young Thracian named Spartacus, the one who bears the name of the great rebel. He is perhaps 20 years old, beautifully muscled, armed with the curved sword and small shield traditional to his people. His record is impressive for someone so young. 12 victories, no defeats, a reputation for quick thinking and quicker reflexes. As we face each other across the sand, I see in his eyes the same mixture of fear and determination that I remember from my own early combats. He is skilled, certainly, and brave, but he lacks the deep understanding of mortality that comes only from years of proximity to death. He still believes in his own invincibility, still thinks that youth and skill and courage will prove sufficient to overcome any challenge. The fight begins with the traditional exchange of salutes, a gesture of respect between warriors who will soon attempt to kill each other. There is something almost ceremonial about this moment, as if we are participating in a ritual as old as humanity itself, the formal acknowledgement of enmity before the attempt to resolve it through violence. He attacks first, as I expected he would. Youth is impatient, eager to prove itself, unwilling to wait for the perfect opportunity. His curved sword traces bright arcs through the air, seeking the gaps in my armor, probing for weakness while I retreat steadily, absorbing his assault on my shield, waiting for the moment when enthusiasm will overcome judgment. The crowd loves his aggression, cheering each attack, each near miss, each moment when it seems his blade might find its mark. They want to see the young hero triumph over the aging veteran, to witness the changing of the guard that makes every generation feel immortal. But I have fought too many young heroes to be impressed by their fury. I have learned that the fighter who attacks first is often the fighter who dies first, that patience is a weapon as sharp as any sword, that the ability to wait for the right moment is worth more than all the speed and strength in the world. When his opening comes, a slight overextension as he attempts a particularly ambitious strike, I am ready. My gladius slides between his ribs like a key entering a lock, finding the space between armor plates that his youth and inexperience have left unguarded. The blade penetrates deeply, precisely, finding the heart with the accuracy that comes from years of practice. He dies quickly, which is a mercy, though his death brings me no satisfaction. He was a good fighter, perhaps even a great one given time to develop his skills. But the arena does not grant time to anyone, and potential is meaningless if it cannot be realized before the next fatal mistake. The crowd's reaction is subdued. They had hoped for a longer contest, more drama, more opportunities to experience the vicarious thrill of mortal combat. A quick, clean kill, however skillful, does not provide the extended entertainment they crave. My second opponent is more experienced, a seasoned gladiator named Lucius Maximus, who has survived 6 years in various arenas throughout the empire. He fights as a Murmillo, armed with a heavy rectangular shield and straight sword that mirror the equipment of Roman legionaries. His approach is methodical, conservative, based on the same principles of patience and precision that have kept me alive. This fight is different from the first, a chess match rather than a cavalry charge, a contest of minds as much as bodies. We circle each other warily, each looking for tells in the other's stance, each waiting for the opportunity that will allow attack without excessive risk. The crowd grows restless, wanting action, but both of us ignore their calls for blood. The combat, when it comes, is brief but intense. A series of exchanges, each lasting only seconds, each requiring split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. His shield work is excellent, his footwork precise, his timing nearly perfect. Under other circumstances, he might have won. But I have one advantage that experience cannot overcome: desperation. I know that this is likely my last great performance, my final chance to demonstrate the skills that have defined my adult life. The knowledge lends an edge to my movements, a sharpness to my focus that transforms mere technique into something approaching art. The end comes suddenly, as it often does, in contests between skilled opponents. A momentary lapse in his concentration, a shield held a fraction too low, and my gladius finds the gap between his helmet and his shoulder guard. The blade severs the great vessels that feed his brain, and he collapses without a sound. 2 victories, 2 deaths, 2 men who will be forgotten by tomorrow while their killer lives on to face another day, another opponent, another chance to add to the collection of corpses that mark my passage through this strange existence. The crowd is more appreciative now, beginning to understand that they are witnessing something special, not just combat but mastery. The work of someone who has spent years perfecting the art of staying alive in a profession where the average lifespan is measured in months rather than years. But the real tests are yet to come. The next opponent is Marcus Brutus, the retiarius, whose net has claimed more than 40 lives. He is famous throughout the empire, his technique studied by gladiators and spectators alike, his name spoken with the kind of reverence usually reserved for gods and emperors. Fighting a retiarius requires different tactics, different timing, different strategies. The net is both weapon and tool, capable of entangling and controlling as well as killing. The trident extends his reach, while the lack of heavy armor makes him faster and more agile than traditional gladiators. But the same lack of armor that gives him speed also makes him vulnerable. If I can get inside his guard, past the net and the trident, his light equipment will provide little protection. The crowd falls silent as we face each other. This is the contest they have been waiting for. 2 masters of their respective arts, 2 gladiators at the peak of their abilities, facing each other in what may be the defining moment of both their careers. Brutus moves like a dancer, his net flowing through the air in patterns that seem almost hypnotic. He casts and retrieves, each throw designed to limit my movement, to force me into positions where his trident can find its mark. I dodge and weave, my shield deflecting the weighted edges of his net, my sword seeking opportunities to cut the cords that bind his weapon together. The fight continues for long minutes, neither of us able to gain a decisive advantage. The crowd is on its feet now, cheering every near miss, every spectacular evasion, every moment when it seems one of us might finally break through the other's defenses. This is gladiatorial combat at its finest. Skill pitted against skill. Experience against experience, will against will. When the end comes, it is almost anticlimactic. A stumble, mine not his, that throws off my timing for just an instant. His net settles over me like a living thing, its weights dragging at my sword arm, its mesh entangling my legs. I fight against it, but the cords are strong and his technique is perfect. The trident descends toward my throat, its 3 points gleaming in the afternoon sun. But I have one last gambit. one final trick learned from years of desperate situations. Instead of fighting the net, I use it, rolling with its pull to get closer to him, inside the effective range of his trident. My gladius, freed by the motion, finds the gap between his ribs, sliding between muscle and bone to pierce his heart. He dies with surprise in his eyes, as if he cannot quite believe that his perfect technique has failed him. The net falls away from my body as his grip loosens, its power broken by the death of the man who wielded it. I stand over his body, breathing hard, feeling the weight of another victory, another survival, another step deeper into the legend I am becoming. 3 victories now. 3 of Rome's finest gladiators dead by my hand in a single afternoon. The crowd is ecstatic, their cheers echoing off the walls of the amphitheater like thunder. I have given them the spectacle they craved, the drama they demanded, the kind of performance that will be discussed in the taverns and forums for months to come. But I am not finished. There are still opponents to face, still battles to win or lose, still chances to add to my legacy or to see it ended by a younger, stronger, or simply luckier adversary. The afternoon is far from over, and the arena's hunger for blood is far from satisfied. My 4th opponent is Gaius Maximus, the undefeated Hoplomachus whose spear and small shield have served him well through 43 consecutive victories. He is older than the others, perhaps 35, with the kind of experience that comes only from years of successful combat. His reputation is based not on flashy technique but on consistent excellence, the ability to find ways to win regardless of circumstances. The spear changes everything. Its reach is enormous, its point sharp enough to penetrate any armor, its length allowing him to strike while remaining outside the effective range of my gladius. Fighting a spear-armed opponent requires patience, timing, and the ability to recognize the brief moments when the weapon's length becomes a disadvantage rather than an asset. We begin cautiously, each respecting the other's capabilities, each understanding that a single mistake could prove fatal. His spear weaves patterns in the air between us, its point tracking my movements, ready to strike the moment I commit to an attack. I probe his defenses with feints and false starts, testing his reactions, looking for the rhythm that will allow me to time my approach. The crowd settles into a different kind of attention, recognizing that this contest will require more patience than the previous ones. These are 2 masters at work, each with decades of experience, each understanding that the victor will be determined not by a single moment of brilliance, but by the accumulation of small advantages, the gradual wearing down of the opponent's defenses. When I finally make my move, it is after nearly 10 minutes of careful maneuvering. A commitment to the left followed by a sudden reversal to the right, using my shield to deflect his spear point, while closing the distance that negates his advantage. For an instant, we are at close quarters, gladius against spear haft, experience against experience, will against will. The moment stretches like eternity, both of us knowing that whoever breaks first will likely die. Then my blade finds the gap in his armor, sliding between plates to penetrate the muscles of his chest. He falls backward, his spear clattering on the sand, his 43-fight winning streak ended by a 44th that he will not survive. 4 victories. 4 dead gladiators. 4 names added to the list of those who have fallen to the Gallic destroyer. The crowd is in a frenzy now, their voices hoarse from shouting, their excitement palpable even from the arena floor. I have exceeded their expectations, provided entertainment beyond their wildest hopes, demonstrated the kind of skill that transforms mere combat into art. But the greatest challenge still awaits. My final opponent is Vercingetorix, the Gallic giant whose longsword has carved a path of destruction through the gladiatorial schools of the empire. He stands nearly 7 feet tall, his reach enormous, his strength legendary. He has never been defeated in single combat, his record an unbroken string of victories that spans 8 years and 63 fights. As we face each other across the blood-soaked sand, I see something in his eyes that I have not seen in the others. Recognition. We are both Gauls, both survivors of the conquest that destroyed our people, both victims of the Roman hunger for expansion and glory. In another life, we might have fought side by side against the legions. In this life, we must fight each other for the entertainment of our conquerors. His sword is a thing of beauty, 4 feet of curved steel that gleams like captured sunlight. It is a weapon designed for killing, not for display, worn smooth by years of use, marked with nicks and scratches that tell stories of past victories. In his hands, it becomes something almost alive, moving with a fluidity that seems to defy the laws of physics. The crowd falls silent as we begin to circle each other. This is the moment they have been waiting for. The ultimate contest, the meeting of 2 legends, the battle that will determine which name will be remembered and which will be forgotten. Even the Emperor leans forward in his throne, his attention focused completely on the small drama being played out in the sand below. We fight with a ferocity born of shared history, shared loss, shared understanding of what this contest represents. It is not just 2 gladiators fighting for survival. It is the final battle of the Gallic Wars, played out in miniature, 30 years too late but no less meaningful for the delay. His reach advantage is enormous, his strength overwhelming, his technique polished by years of successful combat. My gladius seems pitiful against his great sword, my armor inadequate against his power. But I have advantages too: speed, experience, and the desperate knowledge that this is my last chance to prove that skill can triumph over strength, that intelligence can overcome brute force. The battle rages for what seems like hours but is probably only minutes. We are both bleeding from multiple wounds, both exhausted by the sustained effort, both driven by something deeper than mere survival instinct. The crowd watches in awed silence, understanding that they are witnessing something extraordinary. Not just combat, but a kind of primitive poetry written in blood and steel. When the end comes, it is almost too quick to follow. A moment of overextension on his part, a gap in his defenses that exists for perhaps a tenth of a second. My gladius finds its mark, sliding between his ribs to pierce his heart. He falls, like a great tree, his sword clattering on the sand, his eyes still holding the fierce pride of a warrior who has fought well and died better. 5 victories, 5 of the finest gladiators in the empire dead by my hand in a single afternoon. I stand alone in the center of the arena, surrounded by the bodies of men who were legends in their own right. Men whose names will be forgotten, while mine echoes through the ages. The crowd erupts in a sound unlike anything I have ever heard. 50,000 voices united in appreciation of a performance that has transcended mere entertainment to become something approaching art. They throw flowers and coins and jewelry into the arena, shouting my name, demanding that I acknowledge their acclaim. But I am beyond such considerations now. I am exhausted, wounded, drained by the effort of fighting 5 consecutive battles against opponents who would have challenged me individually on my best day. I have achieved something that may never be equaled, a perfect performance in the ultimate venue, a demonstration of skill that will be remembered as long as Rome endures. The emperor rises from his throne, his movement silencing the crowd. He extends his hand, thumb turned upward in the gesture that grants life to those who have earned it through exceptional performance. The crowd roars its approval, understanding that they have witnessed history, that they will tell their grandchildren about the day they saw the greatest gladiatorial performance in the empire's history. I raise my gladius to the imperial box, acknowledging the emperor's mercy, accepting the crowd's acclaim. But my thoughts are not on victory or survival or the glory that will follow. They are on the men who died today, on the faces that will haunt my dreams, on the weight of accumulated mortality that grows heavier with each passing year. The arena. Slaves come to remove the bodies, their movements efficient and practiced. These men have seen it all before, the victories and defeats, the triumphs and tragedies, the endless cycle of death and survival that defines the gladiatorial world. They work in silence, understanding that they are cleaning up after something sacred, something that touches the deepest mysteries of human existence. As I walk toward the gate that leads back to the ludus, I am aware that I am changed by what has happened today. I am no longer just a gladiator, but something else, a legend, a symbol, a story that will be told and retold until the telling becomes more important than the truth. But I am also still a slave, still property of the lanista, still subject to the whims of those who own me. Victory in the arena grants temporary glory but not lasting freedom. Tomorrow I will wake in the same cell, eat the same food, prepare for the same possibility of death that has defined my existence for 7 years. Yet something has changed. I have proven to myself and to the world that I am more than just a killer, more than just a piece of entertainment, more than just a commodity to be bought and sold. I have demonstrated that even in the most degraded circumstances, it is possible to achieve something approaching greatness, to transform necessity into art, to find meaning in the most meaningless of occupations. The crowd's cheers follow me as I disappear into the tunnel, their voices echoing off the stone walls like the songs of some ancient choir. They will remember this day, tell stories about it, argue about the details, debate the significance. But they will never understand what it cost, what it took from those who participated, what it added to the weight of memory that every gladiator carries. In the darkness of the tunnel, away from the crowd's adulation and the sun's harsh light, I allow myself a moment of reflection. I think of the boy I was before the legions came, before the chains, before the arena. I think of the man I have become, shaped by violence and hardened by loss. I think of the uncertain future that awaits, the battles yet to be fought, the opponents yet to be faced. Most of all, I think of the 5 men who died today, who will never see another sunrise, who have been reduced to entries in the record books, and memories in the minds of those who watched them fall. They were warriors, artists in their own right, men who had mastered the most difficult of all arts, the art of staying alive in a world designed to kill them. Their deaths have purchased my legend, their blood has written my story, their sacrifice has elevated me to heights I never imagined possible. I am grateful for their inadvertent gift, but I am also burdened by it, aware that I now carry their stories as well as my own, that their names are inscribed in the record of my victories, even as they fade from public memory. The ludus is quiet. When I return, the other gladiators, having watched the games from the holding cells, understanding that they have witnessed something extraordinary, they look at me with a mixture of awe and fear, recognition and distance. I'm no longer quite one of them. I have crossed into that rarefied realm where gladiators become legends, where survival transcends mere existence to become something approaching immortality. But I am still a gladiator, still a slave, still subject to the same laws and restrictions that govern all of us. The cell I return to is the same one I left this morning, furnished with the same simple necessities, bounded by the same stone walls. Nothing has changed except the knowledge that I now carry, the understanding of what I have achieved and what it has cost. Sleep comes eventually, though it is haunted by the faces of the men I killed today, by the weight of their stories, by the recognition that I have become something I never intended to be, a dealer in death, a merchant of mortality, a craftsman whose raw materials are the lives of other men. But I have also become something else, an artist, a legend, a symbol of the possibility that even in the most hopeless circumstances, it is possible to transcend the limitations of circumstance, to transform degradation into dignity, to find meaning in the most meaningless of existences. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opponents, new opportunities to add to the legend, or to see it ended by someone younger, stronger, or simply luckier. The arena's hunger is never satisfied, its demand for sacrifice never ending. There will always be another fight, another chance to prove myself, another opportunity to demonstrate that I am more than just a slave with a sword. But tonight, in the darkness of my cell, I am simply a man who has survived another day in a world that seems designed to destroy him. I am a Gaul who has become a Roman, a free man who has become a slave, a person who has become a legend. I am all of these things and none of them, defined by my actions yet undefined by my circumstances, mortal yet somehow touched by immortality. The arena has made me what I am, but it has not made me what I will become. That story is still being written, still being carved in the sand with each fight, each victory, each moment of survival, in a world where death is the only certainty and legend, the only hope of lasting meaning. I am Ferox, the Gallic destroyer, victor of this day's great exhibition, survivor of 7 years in the arena, killer of 42 men in single combat. I am also Marcus Aurelius Flavianus, son of Gaul, heir to a people whose freedom was crushed by Roman ambition, keeper of memories that grow dimmer with each passing year. Most of all, I am a gladiator, a man who has learned to find dignity in degradation, meaning in violence, beauty in the brutal art of staying alive when everything and everyone conspires to ensure my death. Tomorrow I will rise and train and prepare to face whatever opponent awaits me. Tonight, I rest in the knowledge that I have achieved something remarkable, something that will outlast the flesh that made it possible. The arena is eternal, but the men who fight in it are not. We are temporary flames that burn brightly before being extinguished, but some flames burn more brightly than others, and some leave marks that time cannot erase. Today I added my mark to the eternal record, inscribed my name in the book of legends that the arena keeps. It may not be enough to justify the cost in blood and suffering, but it is what I have, and it is what I am. In the end, perhaps that is all any of us can hope for, to leave something behind that makes our passage through this world meaningful, even if that meaning is written in the language of violence and death. The sand remembers everything. Tomorrow it will be raked clean, prepared for new battles, new deaths, new stories. But somewhere in those grains lies the record of what happened today, the memory of 5 men who died well and 1 who survived to tell their tale. That is the gladiator's bargain, to trade mortality for memory, to transform the brief span of a human life into something that transcends the merely human. It is a bargain written in blood and sealed with death, but it is also a bargain that offers the only kind of immortality available to those who live by the sword. I have made that bargain and I have honored it. Now I must live with the consequences, carrying the weight of accumulated victory and the burden of accumulated loss, until the day comes when another gladiator stands where I stood today, adding his own chapter to the eternal story that the arena tells. Until then, I am Ferox and I am alive, and that is enough.